So now begins the experiment. All of us are going to try to take 5 minutes or less and tell you a little bit about our slice of the world and where we're going. And, by way of narrative, in 1986, I made a very rash decision to turn down R1 faculty positions and go to a small liberal arts college where I could actually integrate research and education. And if you thought the folks on the Boyer Commission were lonely, imagine my experience. By 1999, I was at the NSF for the first time in the bio directorate, and there was a critical mass growing. One of the amazing things that directly was launched by the Boyer Commission report was this conversation between the biologists and the education folks that launched a Vision and Change and undergraduate biology education initiative that now involves department chairs and deans across the country developing toolkits and resources to help move things forward. But we didn't collectively have the critical mass or the will to really tip the system. Right now, I think the glass is more than half full and we're almost there, right? On Monday, I was at a college innovation event at the White House. There have been 4 college regional innovation meetings. There's a big summit with over 60 universities making commitments coming up in December. There is a federal strategic plan to improve STEM education that has 4 specific strategic goals for undergraduate STEM education that all 14 federal agencies are working together to implement and to partner with a much broader set of stakeholders out there. We're close. What's different now? We have so many things that are different. We have a whole new discipline, discipline-based education research, where faculty are getting positions in the science and engineering disciplinary departments. There are whole departments of engineering education research now where people are doing the research. There's a discipline-based education research report that's out, and at the end of the year, there is a practitioner guide coming out of the national academies that will help faculty implement what we know are effective practices that honors the context they're in. And a lot of this we can credit to some signal events as well as a lot of hard work by everyone. But Bruce Alberts came on for 2 terms as president of the National Academy of Education. One of the many pieces of his legacy is that there's a board on science education at the National Academies that's helping to grow that evidence base. Can you imagine what a change has occurred in AAU, where we now have investments in 8 R1s to change the culture? And I think you heard from Hunter Rawlings about how many more of the universities are there. You picked up a copy of the source book, perhaps, when you came in. AAU, APLU, AAC&U, and AAAS all work together to provide a resource about how to transform undergraduate education. We're helping create a generation of new faculty through the CERTL program, the Centers for the Innovation of Research and Teaching and Learning, which are all the R1 participants there. There's 21 universities that are aiming to go to 50 and more, but this is where almost all of the future faculty come from, and we now have evidence that faculty that go through the CERTL program are much more likely to continue to effectively use a range of innovative practices that are going to ensure the success of their students. There are so many wonderful things that are going on within our portfolio at NSF in the widening implementation and dissemination of evidence-based reforms program, the institutional transformation programs. The University of Illinois, the faculty have committed across the science disciplines to own the introductory classes. They're not turning them off to someone else. They're moving forward. So we've got a lot of great examples. We're moving beyond islands of innovation. The elephant in the room is still, have we changed the recognition and reward systems? The Cottrell Scholars work has shown not so much. There's a terrific resource describing and measuring effective teaching practices that AAAS released with NSF funding that may help us get there. But we do have data, and I would encourage you to come to our breakout session. My colleague Gul Kramer has a wonderful data set she wants you to work with about a large number of institutions and what is actually happening at the current time. So thanks.
Hello. In the spirit of moving things along, I'll dive right in. I direct the Center for Teaching and Educational Innovation at Carnegie Mellon, and so I talk to faculty across the disciplines. When I am in conversations about pedagogical innovations with my humanities and social scientist colleagues, the thing they remind me of is this flipped classroom thing. We've been doing that forever. What's new? So I think that it's important to remember that a lot of the pedagogical innovations we are seeing today are things that some of our colleagues have been keeping in mind and building into their teaching for a while. I think it's important to acknowledge there are disciplinary differences and to give a sense of the potential contrast you may have in mind between STEM fields and humanities and social sciences. I'll put up sort of a maybe typical physics assessment item, and maybe a typical, if there is any typical of any of these disciplines, humanities and social sciences assessment item. There are differences in these disciplines, and one might think about the prevalence of ill-defined problems that we see in STEM versus humanities and social scientists fields. In this effort to apply pedagogical innovation, I think we have to recognize that assessing the learning outcomes and thinking about what it is we want our students to be able to do and how we will measure that is really important. And this gets back to the notion of thinking about data and using data to improve instruction. It tends to be a little bit harder to do assessment when it's an ill-defined problem, when it's not necessarily one answer you can put in a box and check or score automatically. So I think the humanities and social sciences have had to deal with this for a long time. Although in any field, I think when you're thinking about getting students involved in research and inquiry, you're opening up the world of ill-defined problems, and that's a good thing. So when we're in a situation where we're in the tricky areas of teaching and learning, ill-defined problems particularly, but not only in the humanities and social sciences, I say let's go back to the basics. And our approach to educational innovation at Carnegie Mellon sort of reflects that back to basics approach. We start by focusing on the learner. So Herb Simon, who's the founder of many areas of inquiry, in particular the field of cognitive science where I did my training, has a quote that I really like. It's that learning results from what the student does and thinks, and only from what the student does and thinks. The teacher can advance learning by influencing what the student does to learn. A friend of mine has a shorter version of that. Students don't learn what we say, students learn what they say. So really getting students involved in the doing and the saying and the explaining and the peer teaching are really important, but focusing on the learner's key. Technology used judiciously. So technology is a lever that we can apply, doing so in a way that really deliberately improves the learning of our students is one of our goals. And then the last two, to be research-based, that is build on the body of learning science results that are out there. Some colleagues of mine, we wrote a book that distilled some of the principles from learning science and tried to apply it to the typical college professor. But there are many sources of data out there that the problem is just helping faculty who are experts in their disciplines tap into this field and apply it in their teaching. And then, ideally, keeping that cycle of data and information going. Just as David talked, data are the key here. That if we start our exploration or experimentation, as we're wont to do, in an area where it really matters, keeping on monitoring and improving what we're trying in our experimentation through data, that's a very important piece of the puzzle. President Subra Suresh yesterday spoke a little bit about this one case study that we have at Carnegie Mellon, but I want to just give you a feel for it and then show you a list of many others where we're applying these ideas in the context of our own introductory and other courses. We took a college-level traditional introductory statistics course that was taught by an award-winning faculty member, and we actually measured, when students learn in this traditional manner, what do they gain from a sort of off-the-shelf statistics, reasoning, concept inventory, and much to our dismay, we found that when students spend a full 15-week semester, their pre-post learning gains are rather small. In fact, that 3% is not significantly different from zero. So really unfortunate result, which inspired much of the work that was already ongoing, but to really implement an online course within our Open Learning Initiative platform that enabled students to get access to material they might have received in lecture, but to do that as homework where there was interactive feedback and recommendations given to them about their own learning, and then the faculty member could actually track what they were doing before they came to class. We ran a comparison class then with students actually doing the same amount of material in a mini semester and showed that with this adaptive learning and teaching scenario, students significantly enhanced their learning gains relative to the traditional situation. We were excited by this, so we actually worked to replicate it several times at Carnegie Mellon and actually track those students later to make sure that it wasn't just that they did better on that pre-post test, but that they carried the knowledge and retained it and were able to transfer it. And then some of our colleagues at Ithaca worked to get some external studies replicating this result. But this is just one area. What I'm hoping that we can talk about in the breakout session on humanities and social sciences are the areas where you and your colleagues are applying these ideas and innovations in your courses and your programs. At Carnegie Mellon, we're doing it at a variety of, I'm going to skip ahead to this, in a variety of disciplines across our humanities and social sciences college. And I really think it comes down to helping these faculty members leverage the technology effectively, apply the learning science results, and continuously improve their work. So the way I see it, we've talked a lot about scholarship of teaching and learning and scholarly teaching. I think a lot of times it starts with lowering the barriers for faculty to apply learning science results and results from many fields that can help them design instruction to be more effective. But not stopping there, to have our faculty be sort of citizen scientists and working to collect and analyze learning data as they're working with students, so they are then contributing to that field and helping their colleagues to improve and further enhance student learning. Thank you.
My name's Greg Heileman. I'm the Associate Provost at the University of New Mexico, and the breakout session that we've organized, is that me? No, okay. The breakout session that we've organized deals with the use of analytics in decision making, and we've prepared some information from some commercial entities, the Educational Advisory Board that I believe many of you are already working with, from the Gardner Institute, and then from my institution as well. And we're very interested in learning more from you about the context for analytics on your campus. For this talk, though, I'm going to take a little bit of a contrarian view because 3 years ago, I was given this job of associate provost, and my provost gave me an enviable portfolio. He gave me academic program review, which is the most hated thing on campus. He gave me assessment, second most hated thing on campus. He gave me accreditation, probably the third most hated thing on campus. And fourth, I got institutional analytics, which is a blast. I have fun with that. But yesterday we heard from Subra that he's generating a terabyte of data off of his iPad per day, which is impressive. So there's a lot of data out there that we're gathering, but how much information is in it? A couple of years ago, I tried to get some information on what was happening to our engineering students, and I was told you can't have it. Until I became an administrator, I couldn't get data because FERPA, if I give you the data, I'm going to violate FERPA. It's $1 million fine. So the easiest thing to do to not get a $1 million FERPA fine is just not hand out the data. I'm wondering how many people have a well-articulated data governance policy on your campus that people understand and follow? Not too many. There's a few places that do have good ones, but for the most part, so everybody locks up when you try and deal with data. Now, this is the context for doing analytics. Our state says you must admit just about anybody who applies to your institution. You better have high quality. And by the way, we're going to cut your budget. So we have to turn to analytics to do things better, to do things more efficiently, to make the most out of our situation. This title of this one is Correlation Doesn't Equal Causation. I found this on a forum post. Just because you can find SPSS doesn't mean you're qualified to do a logistic regression. And, you know, David mentioned this notion that everybody deserves to graduate. And on our campus, we've found a way to make sure that everyone graduates. It's to have everyone eat more cheese. If we can eat more cheese, then we can generate high correlation. The per capita consumption of mozzarella cheese is correlated at 95% with a doctorate in civil engineering. And so we have to be careful about how we use analytics. And this is real correlation. Go to the Spurious Correlation website, you'll find hundreds of these. So how do we use analytics? I think it was touched on a little bit. We know within 0.16 GPA points what a student's final GPA is going to be after the first semester of study. How do we use that? How do we, as my friend Drew Koch says, how do we crush one dream, but you've got to create the next dream? Are we training people appropriately to use this data? We get 800 students per year who come to our institution saying, I want to be a nurse, and we're going to only admit 80 of them. Well, we know after one semester what we need to do. We don't do it. Now, this is dealing with faculty. This is easier to change the course of history than to change a history course. I know, because I'll see a problem sometimes. I know how to fix it, but it's still got to go through Faculty Senate. And the time scale for Faculty Senate is different than the time scale that we're asked to operate under by the state. This is a real curriculum. That one in the middle that has 7 prerequisites is a sophomore level course in electrical engineering. There's a degree path on here that's 9 courses long. We're supposed to graduate them in 8 semesters. How can you do that with this curriculum? I know it's a problem. I can point to them, but it's still going to take a year or a year and a half to fix that problem. So this is the other thing that happened recently to me on campus. Accreditation, and this is, again, how many faculty feel about statistics. Because of accreditation, we're supposed to do peer evaluation. Well, there's tools out there. Academic Analytics, Elsevier, others have ways of judging, rating our peers, our departments relative to one another. Well, as soon as we brought those folks to campus to start talking about it, you hear, you can't measure me. What are you doing? This is not something that you should be doing. And it's right. There's a lot of things that can't be measured. And so there's danger in bringing these tools to campus if they're misused, and faculty are rightly afraid of that. So this is kind of the last thing I have. There are real people behind these statistics, right? So not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. And so I think it's very important to keep that in mind as we use analytics. This is the iron triangle that our students operate under. It's quite a bit different than ours, right? They can party, sleep, or get good grades. They get to pick 2. The third one's set for them. I think we have to understand that that's what we're operating under. So the last thing I have to say is, this is a quote from Dan Ariely from Ariely. I love the name of his center, the Center for Advanced Hindsight. That's got to be the best name for a center I've ever heard. He says that analytics are like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it, I guess when they're teenagers. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it here, right? So everyone claims that they're doing it. Thank you.
Morning. I'm really concerned about the time, so I will go really quickly to talk about the session related to student and academic transitions. I really appreciated the elegance of the initiatives at the University of Texas that were presented, but my guess is that there's a messiness behind it in terms of how you get there as an institution, and part of our session is really going to deal with the messiness. of what it means to deal with students who are reimagining their lives and resituating their lives, and then what it requires of us as institutions to reimagine our culture and reimagine our leadership at the intersections between disciplines and the student development experience. And so there are, the discussion will be about some of the major trends that are accompanying right now, occurring right now in higher education, and what we know about some of the best and promising practices, as well as obviously opportunities for us to talk about our own lived experiences. Thank you.
I'm certainly not going to be that brief. David, I wanted to start with a comment to you specifically. I'm from a family of 9 children, all back to back within 10 years and 2 months. 2 have doctorates, 1 has a master's, 2 have bachelor's degrees, and the rest either failed out of undergraduate or never graduated high school. And in each and every case, it was an individual faculty member who impacted the child. It was either my brother Alan, who was humiliated in his English class freshman year because he was terrified to read in front of his classmates, or it was myself, who had a mentor from freshman year on, who I still speak with once a week, that made the difference. And so thank you so much for making a difference for so many students. I am the undergraduate director of arts administration at the University of Kentucky, so I have a little bit of different context than many of my colleagues here today. And I imagine that after hearing David's story and reading the article in the New York Times, that we all experience the big takeaway, and maybe very much in the same way. That is our obligation to reinvent our organizations, our universities, to ensure that all of our students graduate. But I'm also imagining that each of us see this through our own lens. The importance of embracing diversity, the value of hiring people who care deeply, the value of using new tools, technologies, and big data. As an artist, educator, father, and social entrepreneur, I experienced David's ability to bring about meaningful change as a true model of how we want and the ways in which we want to prepare our students to move through the world, the inventiveness we hope to foster within them, and a call to revisit the very definition of education itself. And what better space to reinvent the center than the Reinvention Center? For me, I hear David's story as a call to embrace the mindset that he himself has shared with us. Fuel curiosity within our students, challenging them to experience the world through the eyes of an artist, seeing the world from a unique perspective, like an inventor, identifying problems they are best equipped to solve, and the entrepreneur, seeing needs, gaps, and opportunities in creating innovative solutions. Foster their creativity, leveraging their unique skills, knowledge, and passions to bring about meaningful change in whatever capacity they play in the academy and beyond. Develop their collaborative skills, knowing that the problem they will soon inherit cannot be solved by any one person, any academic program, any university, any corporation, or any government. Reward tenacity, clarifying that failure calculated on a bubble sheet only measures a lack of success within the academic world and not within the world, the complex world that they will soon inherit, a world that is most often won by those who prize persistence, resilience, and perseverance. I believe in pioneering simplicity. In education, this is simply defined by our role to preparing a future generation who can make the world a better place. Yes, we must continue teaching students critical thinking skills, deep knowledge, and provide diverse experiences, absolutely. But to address an increasingly globalized world with increasingly globalized problems, we too must reposition curiosity, creativity, collaboration, and tenacity at the center of our educational system. In my session, my breakout session, we are addressing creativity, innovation, and social intelligence. We'll share stories of failure and success in enacting new pedagogies. We'll brainstorm about pedagogical models that embrace the rigor of the academic community, the civic mindedness of service learning, and the creative energies of the artist, the entrepreneur, and the inventor. And we'll flex our own collaborative skills through the Marshmallow Challenge. Thank you.
So I am trained as a biologist, but I now do science education research. And when we think of the most high impact practices, among them study abroad, service learning, and undergraduate research, writing is one of the highest impacts at the least cost. And the reason is we can do that in all of our classes, and we can leverage technology and some of the wonderful assessment tools that have been created to make this a very efficient process. So in trying to think of how we can move this conversation forward, sorry about that. We have two big questions I want to address in our breakout session. One is, how can we leverage what we know from the learning sciences about how people learn and combine that with the disciplinary-based education research, including the long history that we have from the humanities in particular on how writing can be used to learn, bring that into the sciences, and how can we use writing as a tool to learn science. The other big question is, how can we move this along at a faster pace? We have wonderful teachers doing writing in their specific classrooms, and that helps their specific students, but how can we move beyond those very isolated contexts to departments where we think about writing across the curricula, and universities where we write beyond just one discipline? So our work from my research group started actually in 2010 at the Reinvention Center meeting, and some of you were probably at that meeting, where we worked with, we had a working group of 12 faculty that came together, and then we had a workshop of 80 faculty. And we created a heuristic review of the literature of writing to learn research in the STEM disciplines, and how does that promote learning. So we had faculty representing, you can't see the top, but there's all the STEM disciplines from the biological sciences to engineering. And then on this column are the well-defined learning outcomes that we want from our students in the STEM disciplines. And then we have, in addition to this review that we created, we have a searchable database. And in the cells of our matrix here, we have the course level. So if you were interested, for example, in finding a research study that used writing to promote conceptual understanding in an intro chemistry course, you could go to our database and find the research study that promoted that. Now, what you'll notice in bold are the gaps in the literature, and this is where we are currently investing our efforts. We also have a heuristic model, and I'll just, that has 4 elements of it. And what we are trying to say is, to accelerate the rate of change, we have to be more systematic in the way we ask our research questions. So we need to ask, the first level is, what is the role of a particular intervention in improving a well-defined learning outcome? And in our research, in our review, the first 2 steps were not always clear. And then the third level is through impacting variables that mediate and moderate learning. So that's the black box of learning. Why does writing promote deep learning? It's not just time on task, as many assume. It is because it can affect motivation, cognitive, metacognitive skills, beliefs about oneself's abilities, etc. And then finally, context matters. So these are, the research has to understand what the impact of the course, as well as the students and the instructor. And we did this, where our current NSF-funded research is a collaboration of 4 universities doing this research, focusing on the intervention of writing an undergraduate thesis, at promoting critical thinking and writing skills, through impacting, and we've picked a few of what we think are central variables that impact learning: metacognition, epistemology, and self-efficacy, as a function of course context at our different universities and across disciplines. We're working in biology, chemistry, neuroscience, and economics. And our next step for our research is really, how do we go beyond what we've learned in this current research project to really thinking of how can we leverage that conceptual framework that we've just presented with common assessment tools, and using technology to implement these across a wide range of courses. And if we hit that sweet spot right in the middle, this is how we do research in the biomedical sciences. So why can't we bring that format into the education realm and make our work more systematic and more rigorous? So I see my time is up, so I will stop there. So if you'll come to my session, we will talk more about the next stages of our research and also how we can impact writing to learn in each of our particular classrooms. Thank you.